account. Just to be clear, you didn't do it.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
Yes, we do.
If John was beaten up and attacked in that house, who did it?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. And it's not for us to know. Somebody other than Karen is responsible for that, for the killing of John.
Yeah. Roberta in the truth zone, mic hitting raw. Spotlight shining, she exposing the flaw. Debunking the myth, breaking their facade. This is Glass City, respect the squad. On these NYC blocks where the skyline flex big. Roberta Glass slicing lies with a truth rig. Innocence frosters, your stories unravel. She's a map through the madness of gritty gravel. Glass don't bend and facts don't break. She's a storm that's called, you feel the quake. Exposing tales stitched with crooked seams. Justice in the lens, shattered fake dreams. Screams about killers, painted heroes in disguise. She burning propaganda with fire in her eyes. No glamour for the guilty, she call it straight. She backs victims, the voice stay awake. Stats and receipts, no spin, no clutter. Cold cases whisper, she cuts through the mutter. Truth's her tempo, don't confuse the beat. She's standing for the real while you taking a seat. True crime's a block, facts the artillery. Spinning those lies, yo, she checks that misery. Tabloid tales get smashed, no time to play. She's glass hard, break the false and save the day. True crime's a block, facts the artillery. Spinning those lies, yo, she checks that misery. Tabloid tales get smashed, no time.
Okay, how is everybody? I missed you all. I'm on the road, so if it sounds different, it is different. The setup's different. And I just had technical problems. Very hard to watch the trial without all of you. Hello, Taterbug. Thank you, my wonderful moderators, your latex spouse, Taterbug, and of course, Murder by Maestro. Thank you for doing such a good job. But what a day in court. So this is the closer we're looking at, Judson Welsher. Of course, I'm talking about the Karen Reed retrial. If you missed it, am I going too fast? And this is supposed to be the last witness. I was hoping we'd see Natalie Bernschneider-Wawicki, but apparently it's not to be. And this is the accident reconstructionist we saw today. And basically, proving what the critics, meaning Karen Reed supporters, have been saying. So negating this argument is what I mean, that Karen Reed supporters are saying it's kind of, I don't really want to go into what a dumb argument it is, but actually maybe I will for a second. But that none of the witnesses in this case prove that he was hit by a car. See, they're sort of married to the hired guns by the defense, who were, of course, perjured themselves testifying. Certainly, I'm talking about Daniel Wolf, said that he wasn't being paid. He'd never basically met Alan Jackson, but it was really meant for you to infer that he had no contact with Alan Jackson when he was writing him emails, Dear Alan, and very informal emails about how they could make their case stronger to beat the Commonwealth. I mean, it was just so obvious that these ARCA witnesses were hired guns for the defense, who said that there was no accident, that using the small amount of evidence that they were given by the feds and the defense team, it's really not much difference, and that they wouldn't change their opinion if they had more evidence. And even with such a gaslighting, basically a bamboozle of testimony in the first trial, there were still some jurors who said, I think they're being paid by somebody. They're hired guns for the defense. A lot of jurors were like, according to Ronnie, the EMT, and let's hope there's no more Ronnies on this jury, that jurors were saying, hey, these ARCA witnesses seem like they're being paid by somebody. Somebody's paying them. This is oddly seems not unbiased, seems strangely very biased, and very much trying to prove the defense's case. So here we have Judson Welsher come in. And let me just say, the idea that you can take apart the evidence, jurors look at the totality of the evidence. Not every witness, right, can prove the, this state's theory. They can prove maybe one part of it, but we look at it like maybe you look at a jigsaw puzzle and each witness has a piece of the puzzle, and then you look at the totality and you get a clearer picture. And sometimes we don't get a full jigsaw puzzle. It's just not even possible that we have to say that it would be not reasonable to assume that one missing piece or two missing pieces doesn't show us a picture of what happened in the case. So I think it's just kind of it sounds smart until you think about it. Not one witness has proved that he was hit by a car. Well, if one witness could have proved that all, we would have had, the state would have, the Commonwealth would have been done their case in a day. No? Right? I mean, what would be the point of the other witnesses if one witness could prove all that? So it was this Judson Welsher today was incredibly powerful testimony for the Commonwealth. And one of the ways we know that is Robert Alessi, Karen Reed's pro bono lawyer, just objecting over and over and over again. I mean, so much so that he got a voir dire in the beginning. And I thought that was interesting. He just seems devastated that any report could get amended, and he seems still very enraged, incensed that there was a time difference change in this report, starting with what was that? 2 witnesses ago? 1 witness ago? They had to account for the phone drift difference between the car data and the cell phone data with John O'Keefe's cell phone, and he just seems just enraged. But let's take a look at it. I'm so happy that the defense is having one of these pointless voir dires that do nothing. I mean, I just can't believe what the Commonwealth is being punished for removing 2 slides and updating the time. I don't know. It just seems, compared to what the defense has done in this case, deleting text messages. By the way, I have to call on you. If you listen, please hit the thumbs up. And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, the free Karen readers have just destroyed my ratings on Apple Podcast. I came across it the other day and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like a D-. So if any of you are kind enough to leave me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, I certainly would really appreciate it. They're just they're out to bring me down, Okay, here we go. So this is the beginning of Judson Welchler testimony today after a long sidebar.
You're ready.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, Mr. Brennan.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your first and last name for the court reporter who's next to you?
Absolutely. My name is Judson Welchler. My first name is Judson. Last name is Welcher, Welcher.
Sir, what do you do for a profession?
I'm an accident reconstructionist and biomechanical engineer.
I'd like you to explain to us a little bit about what an accident reconstructionist does.
Sure. You can think of accident reconstruction and things such as this as the physics and engineering that happens in car crashes. So accident reconstruction tends to deal with everything that happens to the car and outside the car, skid marks, vehicle damage, the electronic recording systems in the vehicle, things that have to do with the motion forces and how the physics of everything occurred and how that affected the motion of the vehicles.
You said that you were an accident reconstructionist, but also a biomechanical engineer. How is your work as a biomechanical engineer different than an accident reconstructionist?
So simply, you can think of biomechanics as similar, but to everything inside the car. So biomechanics is looking at how the effects of physical forces are applied to the human anatomy. When I'm trying to explain to somebody what I do, I say, hey, it's like a civil engineer who's designing a bridge. So many trucks and cars on the bridge. Are that going to cause the beams in the bridge to fail? Is that going to cause the cables to fail? So a human body is governed by the same laws of physics, just like the bridge. Obviously, it's made of a lot of different materials, but in a human body, my beams are bones. My cables are the muscles and ligaments. Different material properties, but everything's governed by the laws of physics and principles of engineering. So I'm looking at how.
My beams are bones. Doesn't that sound like the beginning of a poem? My beams are bones. Anne Sexton. Doesn't that sound like a poem?
How physical forces, the outside of the car, for when people are inside the car, seatbelts, airbags. The first seatbelt was patented by an engineer. It's engineers who quantify the force of the crash and what kind of injury damage there is to the body. So it is force that causes damage like a fracture. And so we're looking at how the physical forces are applied to the body and what that means in terms of what happens to the body.
Dr. Welcher, I want to ask you a little bit about how you became a biomechanical engineer and an accident reconstructionist. Can you tell us?
Sure. So when I was getting ready to go to college, my father, who was a physician, said, whatever you do, do not go to medical school. Because I was getting ready to go to medical school. So this was 39 years ago, I believe. 35 years ago, 39 years ago. He said, it's just not worth it. So I said, okay. So then I entered into the mechanical engineering. I grew up riding motorcycles, taking things apart, frequently pissing my parents off when I couldn't put it back together. But I like taking things apart and figuring out how things worked. So I went.
Those little details, you know. So he's not above a little light swearing, pissing his parents off when he takes apart a motorcycle. All those details are good. I can talking to the jury, but doing so in a way that seems natural. I mean, Elizabeth Loftus, if you've ever seen her testify, I'd call her, I mean, I don't have a high opinion of Elizabeth Loftus. She's testified for serial killers, murderers, was a big part of getting Tim Hennis out of prison before he was DNA implicated him and he was sent back. He was convicted on military. He's on in military trial. He's on military death row. She turns her whole body, Elizabeth Loftus, as expert witness. She's testified for Weinstein, Turkanis, so many Cosby and killers. She worked on OJ, but she didn't testify. The Night Stalker. Oh, Ted Bundy. You can check out my recent, I don't know how in the near future, I don't know. It's pretty recent for my podcast, my episode in my videos, my interview with John Lewin. I have a whole episode about his cross-examination of Elizabeth Loftus, who testified for Robert Durst. But she turns her whole body and it feels very manipulative. I mean, it's just like, this is what I'm doing to fool you. This feels a little bit more natural, but these are expert witnesses, you know? So That's what they do. They go around doing this. I'm curious how many trials he's testified in. Does anybody know?
To university and got my undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering. From there, I happened to be at a Thursday meeting of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. A group came in from a company that did this type of work, and they showed some examples of how you apply engineering concepts that you learn in mechanical engineering to the human body. And so I was like, man, that's a great job. That's the perfect mix of engineering that I have and my desire, to learn the medical side of things as well without becoming a doctor. So I talked to them. I actually applied to the company and was ultimately hired as a biomechanical engineer.
How long did you continue as a biomechanical engineer until you went back to school?
So I actually, very quickly after I started the job, I took a human anatomy class at a community college. I quickly realized that wasn't enough. And so in around 1993, I went to the USC Medical School and enrolled through what's called concurrent enrollment, which means you can take the class, but you're not actually in medical school. It's a medical school class. But I took gross human anatomy. So it was me and 160 or so other doctors. I took the same human anatomy that first year medical students at USC took. So it began in 1993.
Did you continue to work as you pursued your higher education?
I ultimately started my own company, continued to work, continued to do research, had a wonderful opportunity to have 2 beautiful children, and continue to this day.
Tell us a little bit about the company you started and when.
Sure. So
Dean Walker, I thought of his name too. You're not the only one. I thought like Welsh on a bet. So say you lose a bet and don't pay, I thought it wasn't a great last name too. Not a great name for an expert witness, but Daniel Wolf isn't great either. Wolf in sheep's clothing. And who just said that he's going to come across like an arrogant ass? He comes across like Patrick Bateman to me in the American Psycho. Something so disturbing about him. And his wife joined Free Karen Reed. I hope that comes up in cross-examination right after he testified. Thanks so much, Rosie Grace, for becoming a member of the show and supporting the show. I appreciate it. Truth and Justice, thank you for continuing to be a member for 7 months. Thanks so much.
So in about October of 1994, I started my own company. Me and the guy who was my immediate supervisor said, hey, we can do this better. We can do more research, more testing. And so we started our own company.
What kind of company was it?
It was an accident reconstruction and biomechanical engineering company. We also early on did a bunch of testing and design work for amusement park rides. The same concepts for car crashes applies to roller coasters, basically anything. So we worked and had some contracts on improving ride safety. And I was also on the ASTM committee that looked at amusement park ride designs.
Did that company grow from 2 people?
So did you make a cannon and just hurl people out of it like Arca did? They made this cannon and started hurling things. I mean, it's just, everybody's opinion is based on the information they're given. So anytime someone says, my opinion wouldn't change if I was given more information or more evidence, that should be a huge red flag. Huge red flag. And so much of innocence fraud and how it works is they highlight very minute information or incomplete information and leave out really the salient facts of the case. So Karen Reed is no different. They'll say, well, she hit her taillight. I mean, hit is an exaggeration at 5:07. I would call that hit. I call it the love tap. John O'Keefe's car. Even our own experts say it couldn't have caused that kind of taillight damage. And of course, there's no taillight found. But and they'll say a federal investigation was started into the corruption of the police. And you know what they found? Not much. Not much. Some mean texts and some drinking before operating a police cruiser from Proctor by getting his personal phone. And I think if you got the personal phone of most police officers, there would be this kind of stuff on it. You know, there would be police officers talking crap. And like I've said before, I would expect a police officer to talk crap about me and call me names if I killed someone in such a cruel, callous manner. I mean, she left him to die in a blizzard. I just get chills thinking about Peggy O'Keefe's. Basically, one of the few things she said to Karen Reed after she killed John O'Keefe. You just left him? Yeah, I just left him. So cold and callous. And it's just been so emblematic of everything that the Reed family, not just Karen Reed, is all about. Themselves, their comfort, expressing their need for revenge, expressing their vengeance and need for revenge. I mean, it's just always about Karen Reed, even when there is minor children, orphan children who've now lost their uncle because their uncle's been murdered and you've done it. You don't even comfort them. You're still thinking about your own comfort and covering up your crime, that you can't comfort the children that you spent 2 years with. Oy, that whole thing gives me chills. So what I'm talking about, if you're behind, is Karen Reed went back to get the murder vehicle. She went with her father and her brother and got the murder vehicle and her belongings and was upstairs for, I think she was altogether was there for 30 minutes and didn't say much of anything to anyone. The one thing that we've heard that she did say to the John O'Keefe's niece is that she feels like she's living a nightmare. As opposed to like no one has it worse than I do. No one has it worse than the killer. Oh, give me a break.
Correct. We took it from 2 to about 25 people, and then we ultimately sold it in right around January 1st of 2022.
Before 2022, did you obtain a master's degree?
I did.
And what was that in and where was that from?
So again, I was working full time. Actually, while I was doing my master's degree, I was also teaching classes at Texas A&M through their law enforcement training division. So it was extension classes. But I ultimately completed my master's thesis in December of 2001. That was from USC, University of Southern California. And I received my master's degree in biomedical engineering. I wrote my thesis. It was basically on automotive seat design, but it was titled Whiplash-Associated Disorders, Related Anatomy, Biomechanics of Injury, and the Relationship Between Injury Potential and Automotive Seat Design.
Excuse me, Your Honor, if I may, pardon the interruption. If Dr. Welcher reads from this report, which I think he just did, do we know when he's
Sure. Dr. Welcher asked me if he could refer to his resume, and I said yes. So if you read, just let us know.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And it's my resume, not my report.
Your resume, did I say?
No, you did. He said report.
Yeah, no, it's his resume.
Excuse me, I have a nerdy objection. It's totally unnecessary, Your Honor.
You share with us that your company continued to grow until you ultimately sold it in 2022. During that time, did you continue to pursue higher education after you obtained your master's degree?
I did. So again, ever since 1993, I've been slowly pursuing higher education, both obtaining my master's degree as well as my PhD. During that time frame, I also published 20 peer-reviewed scientific publications. I taught for 5 years at Texas A&M and served as a peer reviewer for both the Society of Automotive Engineers and for a short period on the Archives of Physical Medicine. So I was working and running a company with my co-creator, as well as teaching, conducting research, publishing, also while going to school part-time.
Take us to 2011. Were you still pursuing education at the University of Southern California?
I was.
And what occurred? What did you achieve in 2011?
So in August of 2011, I finally obtained my PhD in biomedical engineering. I wrote my dissertation, reading from my resume, titled Development, Validation, and Testing of a New Sensor Array for Intra-Articular Pressure Measurement, In Vitro Human Lumbar Spine, Intra-Articular Facet Testing, which is a lot of big words to say. I was testing cadaver spines, looking at the loads inside the spines associated with various motions of the spine.
Did you achieve your PhD in biomechanical engineering?
It's actually in biomedical engineering. Biomechanics is within the field of biomedical engineering.
So you have a PhD in biomedical engineering.
Correct.
You mentioned that you have published many articles. Have there been articles that you have published that are relevant to some of the subjects that you're going to talk about during your testimony?
I mean, I have a number of, again, peer-reviewed scientific publications. Peer review just means you submit it to a journal and they have other people review it, give you comments, your peers in the field. I do believe there are a number of them that could certainly be relevant to both the physics and, for example, pedestrian injuries.
If I could mention a few. You wrote an article on sideswipe collision dynamics. What's sideswipe collision dynamics?
So I was actually an invited speaker at the World Congress, or sorry, not the World Congress, the World Reconstruction Expedition. They asked me to give a presentation on the theory, science, and mathematics behind sideswipe or side impact collisions. That would include side collisions, glancing collisions, shallow angle impacts, such as like a corner of a bumper goes into the side of a car, any kind of glancing or clipping type impact.
Similarly, in many of the articles that you wrote, is one of them about methods for quantifying the impact severity of low speed side impacts at varying angles?
It is.
Tell us a little bit what that
So that was a Society of Automotive Engineers paper. Again, another peer-reviewed paper that we worked on.
I might move through this a little faster till we get to Alessi's. So he's hugely qualified. Jennifer Ray, is this true? Has anyone seen the movie The Ghost and Mr. Chicken with Don Knotts? That's what Carl Steinbeck is reminding me of, the expert in the case. So if you haven't seen it, he testifies. I haven't seen it in a zillion years, but they have this expert in this movie, The Ghost of Mr. Chicken. I think that's what it's called. And you think that his testimony is totally reliable and helpful. And, you know, this is like the hero witness. And then on cross-examination, it turns out that this guy is part of a club who's he says regularly meets on Mars or something. That's what Carl Steinbeck is sounding more and more like. According to Jennifer Ray, Carl Steinbeck literally keeps saying Bev and Hank are giving each other signals through coughs and looks, etc. This is an innocence fraud argument, by the way, too. This is what they said in Adnan Syed Hayman Lee's killer's case, is how the accomplice knew new salient facts to the case is because the cops were knocking in Morse code. Like anyone would know Morse code in this day and age, even 20 years ago. We're knocking on the table in Morse code. So Bev keeps saying Bev and Hank are giving each other signals through coughs and looks, etc. Strangely, Bev denies like what 80% of his motions. Those looks aren't helping, and he's a drunk free Karen Reed fool. I think he's always been I think he's always been a conspirator. I think we're just finding out now. I think he held it well. Is my point? Is my reference to the ghost and Mr. Chicken? Let's see. Let's move forward here to Alessi, because this guy is very qualified, etc. Actually, I might just take a quickie break. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. But before I do, thank you, JMB. Also, Truth and Justice says, thanks, Roberta. Even while traveling, you are engaging with us. Yeah, I missed you guys. I was devastated. You can ask Meister. I was devastated that I couldn't get this going today and that I had to miss a day of court. Yeah, I missed everybody. All right, I'm going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. I will be right back.
So
Mic check, Roberta
the groundwork, human and drawing by commonly read.
California?
Oh, yes, sir.
Glass shatter lies echoes through the streets, standing for victims, giving voice their beats. And
Facts on the very
sharp as night.
chain.
Roberta exposing she's the anti-fraud light. Hard task warrior, dissecting state
In both vehicles.
Twisted innocence,
Was that an important part of your study, Doctor?
I think so. Again, it's always good if you're going to talk about what happened to the cars or what happened to the people to look at what happened to the cars. We need to actually look at the cars, not just look at photographs when possible.
Justice till the end. Headphones blazing, she drops heavy artillery, narratives twisted, meet blunt object civility. Roberta got receipts that unravel the ploy, exposing the lies these fraudsters deploy. Glass shatters lies,
What is some of the information he'd like to share today?
giving voice their beats. NYC Post, sharp as night. Roberta
Your Honor,
exposing she's the
I'm looking at
anti-fraud
the paper
light.
version of mine.
Okay, is the paper version the same as what we're going to see up here?
It is.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to skip past Alessi's voir dire. It was very short, and I don't think anybody in my audience can take it. It's just basically grilling him on, I think, what did he take out a slide or two and updated his time to basically accommodate the better information about the time drift between the, I just don't think Alessi will ever drop this. He really feels like he should have won his motion. He's just stuck. It's just like this kind of obsession. You can hear it in his questions. He really thinks that these witnesses shouldn't have been allowed to testify and that this is a Rule 14, while his team does these huge, Rule 14 violations, discovery violations. I mean, you can't amend a report. I mean, the Commonwealth has gotten everything in time and made a few amendments. Which hasn't really. And the defense has violated discovery over and over again with Marie Russell, Richard Green, ARCA, and then ARCA again. Then they deleted all their text messages. So, I mean, the Commonwealth can't ask any questions about communications, really, that they don't, except for the few that they already have. I mean, they can't ask about what they don't know. I mean, I don't think any of her witnesses are going to do well on cross. They didn't do well. I mean, do you think she's going to invite back all these people? You think she's going to invite back? I think I do, but I may be in, my girlfriend keeps telling me I'm La La Land. I think they're going to invite back the plow driver, right? Invite back Marie Russell, Arca. I think everybody's coming back and more. And this fraudulent medical examiner who got fired by the state of Rhode Island because she didn't complete, I think at the time she was fired, it was reported differently all the time, but it was like 1,400 and something autopsies weren't done. It's not like a few, it's in the thousands, 1,000 and almost 1,500.
Thank you. And Dr. Welcher is going to manage the PowerPoint presentation. Sir, you mentioned that you wanted to look at the area and look at the scene. Your office is in California?
It is.
Why was it important to come all the way out to this area to see the scene firsthand?
Hold on a second.
I'll let you set up before I start asking you more questions.
There we go.
Okay.
So that's me. That's my first slide.
I
Again,
have a couple questions for you, Dr. Welcher.
please.
The first is, your office is in California.
Oh, yes, sir.
Why was it important to come all the way out here and view the scene firsthand?
And you want to have as much information as possible. So I wanted to, physically look at all the things so I can actually see with my own hands, my own eyes, lay hands upon it, look at it as best I can. You try and inspect and look at as many things as you possibly can. Sometimes they don't exist anymore. Sometimes they're gone. And you have to make the best approximation if you can't do that. In this case, I was able to look at the scene in both vehicles.
Was that an important part of your study, Doctor?
I think so. Again, it's always good if you're going to talk about what happened to the cars or what happened to the people to look at what happened to the cars, meaning to actually look at the cars, not just look at photographs when possible. So I have physically looked at the cars. For example, on the Lexus, I climbed in it, over it, underneath it. I downloaded data from it. I did a whole bunch of things looking at Miss Reed's Lexus to assist in my analysis to try and add some further objective data to what we're doing here. So same thing with Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle. Looked at the rear bumper, took some pieces off the rear bumper to see what was behind the cover, to see what kind of damage we did or didn't have. So went to the scene, looked at the measurements of the curb, looked at where some of the lines are on the road because you can see them in some of the photographs. Again, it's always good when possible to inspect everything you can inspect.
If you could now begin and tell us how you started your investigation.
Sure. So on September 23rd, I had an opportunity to come out. Mr. Brandon, was the first time I ever met you on that day, I believe. And I had received material before that. And what you see here is, this is my inspection of Miss Reed's vehicle. In the upper left photograph, you'll see, oh, this doesn't work very well. Upper left photograph, that's Miss Reed's vehicle. That's Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, the Chevy Traverse. And then what you see here is a laser scanner. You can see it on the ground here. Laser scanner is creating a 3D model of the vehicles. So I use that to create a 3D model of the vehicles. You can see me in the upper right photograph. That watch is this watch right here, my Garmin watch. And what I'm doing is looking at the construction composition of that right rear corner of the bumper. I'm looking at things such as the dimensions, where various lights and components are, and how does the geometry of that bumper relate to things that would be hit when backed into.
Dr. Welcher notes this is 9/23/94. Is that an accurate date of when you came and first started looking at the vehicles in the area?
You said 24, correct?
I did.
You said 9/23/24, correct. And then on the slide, what I tried to do is underline what I'm doing. So this is inspection of the Reed Lexus. And as noted, I'm only showing you a couple. I actually took 445 photographs.
Do you remember when you began this case, the month or the date?
No, it was obviously before this. I had material before I came out to look at the vehicles.
You think it was months before this?
I don't think it was months. No, it was maybe a month, if not less.
So you began your work in the fall of 2024?
Correct.
And I just want to ask you about the picture in the middle. You see the right taillight housing is missing. Did you
Correct.
understand that had been removed prior to you looking at the car?
It was, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. However, some of the evidence stickers, these white stickers here, were still on the vehicle.
You did not place those. Did you place those stickers on yourself?
I did not.
Were they there when you first saw the car?
Correct. They match what I'd seen in other photos.
Thank you.
So just continuing on. So what you see is, again, I mentioned looking underneath the bumper. So we wanted to see what, if anything, was damaged on the corner. So I'm putting my hand to show where the frame rail ends. This is me looking up underneath to the backside of this taillight. If you can see, this red taillight actually sticks out. And so I'm checking the front here for damage. I'm checking the back for damage.
1 second, please. Okay, Doctor, when you were looking for damage on the previous slide, did you find any damage to that lower right red taillight?
No, there was no damage to the taillight.
The middle picture is from the inside, looking at the inside of that taillight. Was there any damage to the inside of that taillight?
There was not.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So again, looked at the height of it. I mentioned this lower taillight. Notice how the structure of the bumper protrudes out. You can see one of the marks, which is consistent with the contact to Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle. Here, this scratch mark, or scuff mark. Notice how close it is to this light. Again, some of the evidence stickers. Just a better view of those, then going down the side of the vehicle. So with all that information, I mentioned a laser scan. So you move this laser scanner, and each minute and 51 second scan is collecting about 50 million data points. And so you scan all the way around, and then what you do is you merge all that data together. So even though this looks like a poor photograph, what you're seeing is hundreds of millions of photographs, hundreds of millions of points. And so you literally can figure out, if you want to know the distance from this lug nut to where the lighter is on the ashtray, you could probably do that to an accuracy of about 2 to 3 millimeters. So really, taking tons and tons of data. So it knows the exact position of every one of these millions of data points, and it knows the color associated with those data points.
Why is that data imaging so important in accident reconstruction?
You want to have an accurate model of the car. So, you probably don't need literally that many points to get an accurate model, but that's just the nature of the way the science is going. Computers are getting better and faster. Scanners are getting faster. So you get an enormous amount of data when you use these scanners nowadays. So then, as indicated on the underline here, I did a CDR. That's a little different than what you heard me say before. CDR is crash data retrieval. So that's the hardware and software that you use to download or actually copy or take an image of, which means you're just taking an image off what's on the vehicle, the EDR, which is the event data recorder. So you use the crash data retrieval hardware to download the event data recorder, otherwise commonly known as a black box. So I downloaded the black box from this vehicle, and although you can hardly read it here, again, I mentioned there are two systems on this vehicle. This is the CDR system or EDR system. There's also the text stream. The EDR system, this system is primarily to manage the safety components, protect the occupants of the Lexus. So things like fire the airbag, fire what's called a pretensioner, keep track of the severity of the crash to decide whether we need to fire the airbag.
Welsher's commitment to doing his job. He bought a Lexus, the same model, make it. It's Karen Reed. He was fully committed. So I think that, the point of Hank Brennan asking him, had you been on the case long before you flew from California to Massachusetts to take, 400 and something pictures? He's like, no, just a month. It shows that he was absorbed in doing everything he could to find out what happened for the Commonwealth. Had he gotten there and said, no way, there's no accident, I think he would have been a disappointing witness for the, don't think he would be used as a witness. ARCA, it just seems to me so obvious that ARCA, all of ARCA's I don't know, what do you call them? Reconstructions or tests were done to get a certain result that would be favorable for the defense. I mean, you don't ask the defense attorney that, if you don't want me to say this, I won't. If you don't want me to say that most accidents happen at night, I won't. And it's not a kind of usual, I mean, being clipped is different than being hit head on. So, and run over. I mean, I think that was one of Alessi's stranger cross-examinations in this case. And it's almost like MIA, Alan Jackson, and Yannetti has had very little to do in this case. I mean, if he's really the black sheep of the team. It's so obvious that Karen Reed is in charge of her defense. This is the way I see it. It's obvious to me. I may be wrong, but the way I see it is that Karen Reed is leading her legal team. And she's deciding which players she wants to put in. And she likes Alan Jackson's really aggressive, nasty cross-examination style. I mean, aggressive is a nice way to put it. Some other people would call it, nasty, bamboozling, twisting of the witness's words. Super aggressive, whatever you're going to say about it, however effective it is. And I think it's been less effective this time around because almost every witness he's aggressively crossing. If you make everyone public enemy number one, it takes away the power when you do. I mean, if you go around shouting all the time, people stop taking notice, right? They'll be like, that's the shouty guy. That's the angry lawyer who's going to try to tear everyone apart or bring them to their knees, as it's been reported that William Reed, Karen Reed's father, told him to do. You promised that you'd bring Jennifer McCabe to her knees, or bring Jennifer McCabe to her knees like you promised you would. I think that's closer to the quote. But I mean, Yannetti's had next to nothing, and I think in some ways he might be, I think he's an innocence fraudster, just like Alan Jackson. I prefer him to Alan Jackson, but that's just me. As a juror, I would prefer him, but he's hardly had anything to do with the case. Alan Jackson, it's just like it seems like has had very little to do in this case. And they just seemed like, I noticed this months before this trial, that they seemed to be, they were always asking for more time and more time. They weren't ready. They just seemed like they were over it. Like the first chance they got at getting Karen Reed, like the best result they could get her is a hung jury. And they didn't have any hopes of getting her an acquittal. And they weren't up for it, and they weren't getting paid this time round. Karen Reed paid in a lump sum, each of them, I think $250,000 and $200,000. I can't remember who got what. Does anyone remember? Is it Alan Jackson who got $250,000 and Yannetti who got around 200, something like that? That's my memory of it. I may be wrong. It may be the reverse. But they weren't getting paid this time around. And then she's bringing on Alessi's doing all the heavy lifting. It's like the cool kids making the nerdy kid do their homework or fill out their SATs for them. And Alessi has never tried a case before, is what I've heard. He's not that kind of lawyer. So, I mean, certainly not a criminal case. He's a civil lawyer. I just can't imagine the jury liking him. Can you?
So it's not really designed for pedestrian impacts. So when we downloaded this vehicle, we got what's called a none file. A none file simply means that there's no data there. The system's working properly. We had no fault codes. But for a car hitting a pedestrian to cause a file here, this is really more designed for car-to-car impacts, something that's going to have a significant impact on the occupant of the Lexus. And again, the Lexus is a 6,000-pound vehicle. Mr. O'Keefe's only 216 pounds. So it's not going to register from hitting a pedestrian.
Were you surprised that there was no information about a collision in the EDR?
No, it's exactly what I expected. Okay, I mentioned the second system. So as underlined up here, this is the text stream. So this is from Toyota. So they have text stream data. You can see the screens here. There's generally two types of files, what's called a vehicle control history and a PCS file. The PCS file is the protection system. So I also looked at Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle. Sorry, PCS is pre-collision system. Looked at Mr. O'Keefe's.
I mean, you can say that's really positive for Karen Reed's defense, that they showed no collision. There's an event where she's going backwards with her foot 74.5% down on the gas pedal, never touching the brake during going backwards, with her infotainment system beeping and flashing at her, telling her she's going to hit something. But the problem with that is that there's not an alternate story of why she was going in reverse. And Karen Reed has said, and I hope they play this, if they haven't already, did I miss it? The clip where she says, like, I didn't reverse. I never reversed. So clearly she's lying, and she did. But there isn't an alternate story as to what was going on at that time that she had to nearly floor it in reverse. And, you know, and what did she hit, you know, alternatively, if not John O'Keefe at that time? Iowa Travel Nurse, thanks so much for becoming a member. Enjoy the emojis. There's a whole bunch of them. Justice for John O'Keefe with his badge number. No Traction Jackson. There's also some fun emojis. Bunny Boiler. Hank Brennan in shadow with doing the shh about ARCA. Manny says ARCA will look ridiculous after Welcher. That's sort of what my girlfriend was saying. Hank will mop the floor with them. Can Hank bring up how ARCA was paid? Yes. That's usually the question that expert witnesses get asked. How much are you paid? How much are you getting for your testimony? What are you paid by the hour? That's the usual question by a prosecutor for a hired gun, you know, expert witness. I was shocked that Marie Russell wasn't asked that first time around. She may be working for free because this is her first time she's testifying. She may be getting very little. I don't know. Or they may not have known. Maybe that discovery was hidden from them. But yeah, all that stuff can come in. And the talking on an encrypted app, I believe, can come in. And deleting the text messages can come in. I believe that everything's open for cross-examination, especially since they deleted all their contact via text. Like when we said communication, we didn't know we had to save that kind of communication. I mean, that is just the biggest lie. I don't think it's not going to be good. She maybe the better strategy, and maybe I have to take a poll, would be to not put on a defense. Would that be the better strategy now? If you were her defense lawyers, would you say it's better to just make your case in cross-examination and say, look, jury, they didn't meet their burden? Is that what Alan Jackson, we went over Alan Jackson's opening, is that what he was setting up for? When he said in his opening, he kept saying they have beyond all reason, any and all reasonable doubt. So basically, he was trying to exaggerate the burden of proof in a criminal trial and make it sound like it's any doubt by saying all and any reasonable doubt, but the doubt has to be reasonable. Was that what he was setting up for? Are they just going to pick this new medical examiner from Rhode Island? I'm forgetting her name now. Help me out. And say, forget everybody else. I mean, really, they're going to put Lucky Loughran, Marie Russell? I mean, we hardly heard about a dog in this case. And what we have heard is that she's going to change her defense to the ultimate abusive spouse defense, which is John O'Keefe was either thrown down the stairs or fell down the stairs while being attacked by a dog or thrown down the stairs. So perfect for Karen Reed. Can Hank bring up how Arca was paid and make statements like that? Do you want me to mention the time? I don't know what you mean by that. Like that. Tanya Vincent says, Roberta, we're so missed today. I missed everybody too. I was really excited to get back, and it's very frustrating, when stuff like this comes up and you're limited by technical things. It's frustrating. All right. Back to Welsher's, a selection of his 400 and something photographs that he took in this case.
Vehicle, same thing. Took a series of photographs, laser scanned it, looked in it, underneath it, behind it. I mentioned taking some of the bumper parts off. So I took this rear cover off here to look at the damage behind the bumper cover. Most cars have what's referred to as a face bar. That's that piece of metal that you see here. And there's a piece of energy absorber here. That's your face bar. So I'm looking to see if there's any damage to that. There was no damage to that.
Before you go forward, I want you to take a couple steps back because I want to ask you some questions to explain
Please.
tech stream data. Could you go back a couple slides, please?
Sure.
Okay. You mentioned that in the EDR, which is similar to a black box, there was no information found. And then you mentioned a different system, the tech stream. Can you make it clear for us how these systems are different and where they're stored on a motor vehicle?
Sure. A lot of data is stored in a similar location. The tech stream system was originally designed, according to Toyota, for maintenance issues. It seemed to come about around the same time Toyota was having problems with sudden accelerations or allegations of sudden accelerations. So the tech stream data or vehicle control history will give you information when there's, for example, excessive acceleration or rapid shifting of the vehicles or rapid steering of the steering wheel. So the statements are that that's designed to help the maintenance people, if you come in with a problem with your vehicle, to diagnose what that problem is. It has a lot of utility in accident reconstruction because if you jam on the brakes before a crash, frequently the tech stream data will record the crash.
You mentioned Toyota a number of times. Could you share with us the relationship between Toyota and Lexus?
Yeah. Sorry, in my mind, they're the same thing. Toyota and Lexus, obviously a little different, but Lexus is basically made by Toyota. So Toyota and Lexus has the Lexus safety system. Toyota has the Toyota safety systems, which you both read with the tech stream data.
The tech stream data, in this case, does it play an important role in your analysis?
I think so, yes.
The tech stream data, did you independently download that data yourself?
So I independently downloaded it, and then I also ran a test with Miss Reed's vehicle, and I created a new tech stream file so that I had a stamp in the ignition cycles of what the current ignition cycle was. So I did a sudden acceleration test of the vehicle.
On the Lexus or on the exemplar vehicle?
On her Lexus.
When you did the downloading, why did you do it yourself?
Again, you, whenever possible, want to be the one that does it, make sure it's done correctly, and be able to say, hey, how do I know that's from that vehicle? Well, I know because I was the one who did it. And so if I get it from someone else, then they frequently have to bring that person into court to say the other ones that did it so then I can use it. So if I do it myself, it eliminates that problem, and then I have no concerns over where it's coming from. So then I know hey, I did it. This is the right car. This is the right program.
You left us at slide 10 when you were inspecting Mr. O'Keefe's car?
Correct. So again, simply a blue arrow indicating that I looked down behind all this stuff.
Jennifer Ray, you don't think this is the last witness? That's what Karen Reed said. Curious, what have you heard? Listen, Myrna Sultana has the funniest comment. Karen Reed has been writing today. It's a good sign. Usually guilty people are always busy writing. Certainly Keith Ranieri was. He wrote so many post-it notes. Ask Tony Natale. She knows. She was there. It is at the Nexium. I'm talking about the Nexium cult guru. Keith Ranieri got 120 years. for trafficking and other crimes. He was constantly writing Post-it notes. Certainly, your theory bears that out. I love, you know what I love when these guilty witnesses, when they kind of tilt their head to the side looking at exhibits, like they have nothing to do with it. Like they're just examining, like they're just there being like, that's interesting. like they're academics. That it wasn't their doing that they're looking at, the product of their doing, whether it's autopsies or some other kind of evidence. I love when you look and they're writing too. That's a great theory, Murder. I remember that. Funny. Like, fascinating. You know, of course they don't have any emotional reaction, like Karen Reed hasn't, to even some of the jurors haven't had more of a emotional reaction to the evidence in this case. They got sick to their stomach when John O'Keefe's autopsy pictures, some of the really explicit ones were put up, but not Karen Reed. She's laughing, making jokes. The happiest murder defendant. Is Tony Natale in the chat? She knows. The great Tony Natale. She knows. She knows. Oh, that was something. And he's the same lawyer that P. Diddy has, and they've used the same techniques. They put Keith Raniere in these kind of pastel sweaters, like the Menendez brothers, to soften his image. Apparently, they're doing the same with P. Diddy. All the same. Though P. Diddy is bringing a Bible. He's doing what Dominic Dunn's daughter's killer did. He's bringing a Bible to court every week. And I think he's grown out his hair, gray hair on purpose, I think to look also less menacing. Because Keith Raniere dyed his hair, I think, with ballpoint pens. And you can't get dye, but there's ways to kind of maneuver around it. So he looked like Keith Raniere when he dyed his hair with ballpoint pens. He had like this black hair that didn't reflect light. It was so awful looking.
Measurements of it. And then similarly, I have a 3D point cloud of Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle. So part of the reason we're making these 3D point clouds, and we'll touch on this further, in addition to the scene, you can then basically put all these things back together in the computer. So instead of having to drive the cars to the scene, for example, or to Mr. O'Keefe's residence, you can take these computer models and additional data and put it back in the computer and reconstruct everything on the computer. So
can't get hair dye in jail, but Keith Raniere went around it. And that was the rumor, that he dyed his hair with ballpoint pens. It was something that he dyed his hair with something that didn't reflect light. Looked like it made him look like a Manson family member. Oh, Tony Natale says, because they can't get hair dye in prison. Remember when Keith came into prison with this pen? I do. And his horrible fitting acrylic pastel sweaters.
So before we had the exact angle of impact, again, this is for looking at when Miss Reed contacted Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, backing out of Mr. O'Keefe's garage at One Meadows. I lined them up just to generally show the approximate location. A couple things. Notice how, again, this lower portion of the Lexus bumper sticks out. Notice how the side of the Chevrolet slopes in as you get higher up. So this portion sticks out more than this portion. And this is where you would expect any contact damage to occur, assuming there was an impact. So again, looking at the measurements up the height of the vehicle, of course, as you indicated, Mr. Brandon, the taillight's gone. And then went to the scene. So same thing, went to the scene, took, again, 297 photographs of the scene, had our people scan it to create a computer model of the scene. So, literally, if you wanted to know the distance from this window to, say, some manhole cover on the road, we have the data to figure that out, down to a couple millimeters.
In addition to going to the scene and doing the digital mapping, you mentioned other review of materials. Did you have an opportunity to review dash cam footage from Canton Police Department police vehicles to see the general location of where Mr. O'Keefe was when first responders were assisting him?
Objection, Your Honor.
So that's just a yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you.
So the text stream download. So this is a screenshot from the text stream download. Keep in mind, this is kind of maintenance software. So we're looking at a number of things in the maintenance software. What we see is, and this is noted in the report too, that when the vehicle gets into the Canton Police Department after this event, you can see the mileage is 12,665 miles. So that shows up in Trooper Paul's report. It shows up in the photographs, and it shows up as matching the mileage in the text stream data, both at triggers 1164 and triggers 1167.
I'd ask you if you can enlarge the data on the right and break down what it actually means, the different columns and the. Is it possible for you to enlarge that?
My fingers are too fat.
Thank you.
Okay. So what you're looking at is what I called event 1162. If you see anything in blue on these charts, that's information that I added. I typically put my initial, JBW, Judson Welchler, that's me. And so this is referred to as the key cycle trip. So key cycle is simply you turn it on, not necessarily turn the ignition on, turn it on, turn it on. That's one key cycle. So I labeled this one 1162-2 because there's also one that's on the same key cycle that I'm calling 1162-1. The system also records the mileage. So again, this is a maintenance system generally. So what you see is the T here is the trigger, and there's a point. So this time in the text stream data, you could think of it as like a stopwatch. It's when it starts when the car turns on and stops when the car turns off. And then if it sees a triggering event, a T, it records that information. So this is when the trigger happened. So that's 1,142.2 seconds. And so I've converted that to minutes and seconds because most people don't think in seconds. And so what it also does is once it sees a trigger, it's constantly circulating data through the computer. So when it says, okay, we have a trigger, it saves 5 seconds before the trigger and then 5 seconds after the trigger. So the trigger's in the middle and you have 5 seconds of data before and 5 seconds of data after.
I have a couple of questions for you,
Please.
Dr. Welchler. First, starting with the clock, the time in seconds on the left. You mentioned that begins when the car is turned on. What type of clock is that called?
It's just a continuous clock, meaning it's not a clock like a time clock. It's more like a stopwatch kind of clock.
Has it ever been referred to as a running clock?
The same thing. You start the stopwatch as running.
Based on the text stream data alone found in that one spot, can you tell from the data in the text stream alone what time the power was turned on?
No, not alone. It simply tells you how long it's been on. It doesn't necessarily immediately tie it back to a clock time. You need additional information.
And so this in and of itself, the text stream data doesn't give you a certain time on a clock like 1 o'clock or 2:30, anything like that.
No, it simply tells you in this case when the trigger occurred, it's been on for 19 minutes and 2 seconds.
You also mentioned that there's a 10-second window of information this captures, 5 seconds before the T and 5 seconds after the T, the triggering event.
Correct.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained, asking differently.
That window of 10 seconds,
Wow, it seems like we've had a long period going without an objection. But I mean, this just goes to the heart of the matter, but it got worse as this testimony went on. Let's move forward. When he got into these kind of tests. Hold on one second.
you need to advance it 21 to 29 seconds for why? Why do you need to do that?
Because the cell phone is ahead 21 to 29 seconds.
After you advance the text stream ahead 21 to 29 seconds, can you then compare the information, the time that's coming from the infotainment system, Lexus, to Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone from his iPhone?
Correct. That's what you need to have an apples to apples comparison. You need to get them on the same time clock.
Thank you. You can proceed.
See,
So I think we left off.
Karen Reed's defense was really going to take advantage of that. They're so mad that they fixed that, that time difference. And they were going to bamboozle the jury. That was their whole defense. It seemed like it was based on that. To not adjust the time clock, to not get John O'Keefe's cell phone and the infotainment system, Lexus data on the same time clock. You can see it with Alessi. I mean, and you know, they would have just put that minutia and be like, see, it was fine. Obviously he went in the house, even though, you know, he went into the house like a ghost. No one saw him. I mean, what I think has been so damning, and I don't understand why free Karen readers don't get this. It's like so interesting that when really important evidence is put in, damning evidence, not just important, and damning evidence is put in front of their face, they just go, no, that's not what it means. Karen Reed saying, yeah, he died between, or was killed between 12:25 and 12:30. That's what we think. I mean, it's pretty close to 12:31 when, you know, she's reversing into him. How would she know that? I mean, that's called having information only the killer would know. Well, we got that from his phone data. Really? How are you so sure? How are you so sure that they didn't, right? Like Alessi said, you know, put his phone in some kind of, what is it, Faraday bag, you know, or leave his phone out, you know, throw his phone out on the lawn or whatever. I don't know. Make up some story. How are you so sure if you weren't there? But I mean, before this was really worked out, and the timeline was all over the place. Last trial but even before it. How are you so sure? She was there. She knows. She remembers everything. The plan was to teach him a lesson. No one leaves me. So obvious.
Here, so that's 1162-1. So what we have is we have the cell phone data, the original cell phone data on the right-hand side. And then from that text stream data, you know, we have whether it's going forward, we have the speeds, we have the steering angles. So from that information, we ran a simulation to show you what the text stream data means. This is what the 10 seconds of data is. And again, just because the simulation stopped, that's just where the text stream data ends. Again, as we showed you earlier, the car's still moving. That's just the last data point we have. So what that text stream data shows is matching a 3-point turn on that Cedar Crest Street. So we have the vehicle motion, the timing data consistent with the interview statements about making a turn, 3-point turn.
Can you take us back to the data chart and show the 2 points that you just mentioned, the turning? Where's that reflected in the data?
Sure. So you can see
And you'll have to enlarge that. I'm sorry, Doctor.
column N, that's the ship position. So that's looking, we start off going forward right here. And you can see at the start of the simulation, we're going about 9.94 miles an hour. And then as you start a 3-point turn, you generally start, in this case, if you're going to the left, with a left turn. So you can see we have this steering angle here, then the transmission. So again, we have the brake application. So you're coming in, but you're slowing down, and you get down to a speed of approximately 0. Shift into reverse, back up, and then start to turn the other direction as you're backing up. So again, you want the rear to go to the right, you turn the steering wheel to the right. Right is negative. And then as you start to pull around and pull forward, you turn back to correct for the steering. And so that's what this shows. So again, if you put it all into a simulation program, the speeds, the shifting, the distance, keep in mind we only have that 10-second window of data, and the steering angle for that Lexus, that's what it indicates.
Can you enlarge the photograph on the right with the data points and explain to us the significance of that?
Sure. So again, what we're trying to do is we have the infotainment, we have a text stream. We're now trying to see how that correlates to Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone. So we had originally very coarse data points, 154 and 155. There's additional data points between here. So we're looking at how well does ART's predicted time compare to those two. So with the cell phone correction, you end up with the text stream data at 12:23:59 to 12:24:07. So that's actually right in between these two data points. And so we know 154 was closest, but it's on the right-hand side of the road. 155 is when it's turned around and heading back in the southerly direction. So the cell phone data corroborates the text stream timing data in conjunction with the infotainment system data.
Thank you. Please continue.
Okay, so we talked about 1162-1. That's the first trigger on the text stream. So we're going to go to 1162-2. So I've highlighted that in yellow. So we're now talking about the second trigger. So this is on the same ignition cycle. It's on ignition cycle 1162. We have that same continuous running clock, but we've now synced it to real world clocks.
Oh, wow. Wesley loves Octoberfest. Thank you so much. Very generous of you. Gifted 10. Giving them 10 memberships. Thanks, Wesley. They will be handed out in random. Congratulations to whoever got them. Dean Walker, thanks so much for the super sticker. Appreciate it. Nice being back with y'all. So we've gone over the text stream data. Is the text stream? Is that what it's called? The tech data from the car that shows that she did do a 3-point turn when they thought that they, made the wrong turn. She had to, turn around and do a 3-point turn. And now we're on the reversal. If all of you are kind of losing their way, I find this kind of stuff is not my favorite kind of testimony. And yet I found him very easy to understand and very easy to listen to. I don't know how everyone else felt. Should Karen Reed put on a defense? Let's see where we are on my poll. 46% said yes, even when those bunk witnesses, really? Even though Hank Brennan's going to destroy them? 22 say yes, but sort of edit them down. Maybe Arca and I think her name is La Posada, the coroner. I mean, they're both going to be destroyed on cross, but okay. I guess you got to try. And we have 32% say no. So you guys were right last time we did a poll where I couldn't believe that the judge allowed Hank Brennan to have a rebuttal witness for the Commonwealth in this. So you guys were right. The majority of my audience was right last time. I have the smartest, coolest audience, I think. But of course, I'm a little biased.
So instead of the running clock, we now have some information on the real world clock. So at this time, we know the ignition has been on for 19 minutes and 2 seconds. So at the trigger, 19 minutes and 2 seconds. And again, we have 5 seconds either side of that. So between 18 minutes, 57.6 seconds to 19 minutes, 7.5 seconds.
Could you enlarge that, please?
Which part?
That part where your arrow is. You were speaking about the clock. Could you explain that so the jury can see?
Sure. So again, this is continuous from when the time comes on. I just converted it to minutes and seconds here, so you can see how long it's been on. This is the mileage. These are the speeds over here. And this is some information on how far it traveled. Again, we have the plus minus on the steering. That gives us some information on the steering. Really, there's very little steering going on at this point. Slight leftward steer.
Dr. Welcher, did you determine how long after the first trigger, that 3-point turn, that this second trigger occurred?
Yes. 3-point turn occurred about 8 minutes after.
You said a 3-point turn occurred
I'm
after?
sorry, this event, I misspoke. 0.2 occurred about 8 minutes after.
After the 3-point turn?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Can you walk us through this data?
Sure. Okay. So we have the accelerometer data here. I've highlighted a shift from drive to neutral to reverse.
I'm sorry, you're going to need to zoom that in so we can see it.
Absolutely. We have information on the brake switch, brake oil pressure. We have the acceleration data here. And then from that information and using the acceleration data, calculating the speed at which it's backing up. The reason we have slightly different calculations here is we have some evidence that the wheel's slipping on the ground. So we need to use the accelerometer because the wheel speed is simply telling you the speed of the wheel. It's like if you're stationary burning rubber, the speedometer reads a certain speed, but you're not going anywhere. But the accelerometer tells you how much the vehicle's moving. So from all that information, we get information on how far the vehicle's traveled. We've done it in terms of total travel distance. We've done it relative to the start position.
I'm going to ask you to start on the columns on the left and take us through the information that you have regarding this second triggering event. So if you can scroll all the way to the left.
All the way to the left?
Yep. Okay. So the first column regarding time, could you remind us again what that is?
So again, that's the continuous running clock.
And the second column in blue?
That's where I take that time and convert it to what we more commonly use, minutes and seconds.
And now we have a key cycle event different than the 3-point turn. What's the number?
So this is now 1162-2. So again, it's technically in the system the same key cycle. I've called it 1162-2.
And the red number next to it to the right?
That's the mileage. So it's actually at the same mileage as 1162-1. So we know, we see they're within the same mile.
If you can scroll over a couple of columns. From your data, can you tell during that event how far the Lexus traveled during that event?
Yes.
And how do you do that?
So we have accelerometer data. We have velocity data or speed data back here. I've corrected for what you see down here is, and I go through this in a later slide, but right here you can see a significant increase in RPMs, but yet the acceleration is dropping. So what that means is if your RPMs are going up and the speed's going up, that means you should be accelerating more. But what happens because the acceleration is dropping, that means what's actually happened is the wheel's slipping. So what I've done is I've used the accelerometer data to calculate the speed once the vehicle is put into reverse. And once we know the speed, again, feet per second, we know every data point is half a second. So speed times time tells you how far you moved. Feet per second, feet divided by seconds times seconds gives you feet. That's how far you went. So you get how far you went in each interval, then you get the total distance traveled. And so.
Wait, so does he mean slipping or does he mean turning? That the wheel is turning or slipping? I mean, slipping sounds like an accident. I'll wait for you guys to catch up with me. I need help. I need to phone a friend to the audience. So he's saying that, yes, slipping on ice and snow. Thank you. But it was just a little, yes, spun out. Okay. So is he suggesting that the wheel went into him that Karen Reed clipped him by accident? I mean, so clearly not. So clearly. Yeah. Saying wheel spin. Okay, a little wheel spin. Okay, thank you. Thank you, guys. So it's the weather. Thank you. All right. So
this is relative to the start. So 0 is the start. The vehicle goes forward about 34 feet. Then you can see it basically stops in this area here. Then begins to back up and ends up backing a total of 53 back from where it originally started. So if you add 53 to 34, you get 87. So the total motion 34 forward, 53 back. The Lexus moved 87 feet total.
Dr. Welcher, when you say the Lexus moved 83 feet total, is that according to the data, or is that the entirety of the movement of that Lexus?
No, that's just from when the data starts to when the data ends. So if you look at when the data starts, you can see that the vehicle is actually going 13.67 miles an hour. When the data stops, the vehicle is still going 23 miles an hour. And you can see,
I'm sorry.
you can still and see that it's still at 74% throttle. So, you know, this is 3/4 of full throttle in reverse.
So to start with the distance traveled, if you can go to the top, we see that the speed is 13.67. Is that where the data gets picked up?
That's where the first data point is. Again, the trigger is here. This is 5 seconds before the trigger.
Are you able to tell how fast or slow the vehicle is traveling before that data point of 5 seconds before the trigger?
No.
And likewise, on the bottom, the speed. At the end of the 10-second data points at 23.61, can you tell whether or not that speed stayed the same, increased, or decreased?
I mean, considering you're at 74% throttle, it likely increased. How much, I don't know. And you can see that up here, she's on the brake. Down here, she's not on the brake. And so she's not on the brake and at 74% throttle.
What is the percentage of throttle that has to be initiated to cause a triggering event?
For a shift into rear and a rapid throttle application, it's 30%.
If you look at the next column over, if you can go to the top heading for the jury to see the engine.
Okay, for those in the back, did everybody hear that? So basically, for your car to record that this is an event, meaning, so, you know, something happening out of the ordinary in your car. Either you're doing a K turn, there you go, Dean, or a 3-point turn, whatever you want to call it, or to trigger an event, for throttle, it just has to be at 30%. Karen reads at 74. Pressure on the gas. I don't think I've ever pressed the gas that hard in my life in a car. Has anyone else? I mean, it would have to be like maybe your wife's having a baby or something. I don't know. Something. Just the rage. I mean, and the rage continues. It's like not enough to kill John O'Keefe. She has to re-victimize the family. She has to disparage him at any chance she gets. He's the patron saint of Canton, except he's frugal. I think she's the frugal one. She was negotiating down, you know, Yannetti and Alan Jackson's fees and playing them against each other. Yannetti's not up for what this case requires. Did anybody see that email that she wrote? She's writing Alan Jackson.
In RPM data, could you explain that?
Sure. Again, that's the engine RPMs. And so, as I mentioned, you have this jump in engine RPMs and a very dramatic jump in the reported speed of the vehicle. But when you look at the acceleration is actually dropping. So again, that's a telltale sign that the tire's spinning because the vehicle is not being accelerated. And so I've used the accelerometer data. Again, if you just, a process called integration, you integrate the accelerometer data, it will give you the velocity. So what I've done is it's called piecewise integration to get the speed data that takes into account the tire slippage, and from there calculate the speed or the position at each interval going across the top here.
If I could stop you at your column that says JBW speed at each time step.
Yep.
If you go to the bottom, please. So does your data indicate that the speed is changing at the end of the 10-second event?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Is the speed changing at the end of this event?
Yes.
How so?
Well, again, you can see it's increased about 2.7 miles per hour. And again, we know from what I already stated that last time step, you're still at 74% throttle and you have zero brake application.
Is it possible from the data to tell how far the Lexus went forward before it went in reverse in total as far as feet?
Not in total, no. We just have this 10-second window. I can tell you what it did during this 10-second window.
Is it possible to tell how far it continued after the data?
No.
The shift position changes from 1 to 0 to 2. Can you Again, explain to us what that means.
Sure. 1 is drive, 0 is neutral, 2 is reverse. And then brake switch status. Again, a 1 is you're on the brake pedal, enough to activate the brake lights. 0 is you're off the brake pedal.
Each one of those indicators, 1, 0, 2, how much time is for each of those?
0.5 seconds.
So can you tell how long the Lexus was in neutral for?
So again, it only occurs at one time step. And again, there's a little timing issue. Like we only have data every half second. You don't know exactly where in that time it was.
Okay, you can continue, Dr. Welcher.
Next slide or continue on this slide?
Unless there's something else you want to point out to the jury on this slide. You
No,
can
I'm
go
good.
next.
So similarly, using this information to then try to tie it back to the cell phone data to make sure we have the real-time information. Again, this was written back in January before I got the additional information. So what you can see is, I'll zoom in. Again, we're now talking about trigger 1162.2. We know that that's 18 minutes that the vehicle has been on, 18 minutes, 57 seconds, 19 minutes, 2 seconds. This is the range. Again, the plus or minus 5 seconds. The 19 minutes, 2 seconds is when the trigger occurred. Infotainment system, adding those two together, 12:36, plus the 19:7.5 indicates the end of 1162-2 is at 12.
I'm just curious, I'm listening to this and there was a question whether, was it Shannon Burgess's testimony Welsher could have come before Shannon Burgess? Or was it the doctor? I'm getting these confused, but I'm wondering if the Welsher's testimony could have become before Shannon Burgess. Obviously, this is much more, you have 3 people all saying the same thing, and this is a little bit more detailed than Shannon Burgess with the actual mechanics of what happened to the body. But it all complements, all these Dr. Wolf, they all complement each other. So say you were really upset that Shannon Burgess didn't update his LinkedIn profile or get his college degree, only had an associate's degree. You wouldn't have, you could totally negate his testimony altogether. And all you would have to do is to convict Karen Reed, is to believe Dr. Wolf and or Welsher's testimony. No? Am I wrong on that? What do you guys think?
12:31:43.
That 12:31:43, is it based on the Lexus clock from the infotainment system?
It is. It would need to be corrected to the O'Keefe cell phone data.
And when you reconcile that variance of 21.9 seconds, what is the time?
You end up with 12:32:04. So if you simply take this and add 21 seconds to it and add 29 seconds to it, so you get between 12:32:04 and 12:32:12.
When you reconcile the two clocks and you have that range of 12:32:04 to 12:32:14.
12:32:12.
I'm sorry, 12:32:12. Does that simply accommodate the window of data, but not before and after?
Correct. So, again, even on John's O'Keefe's cell phone, even within his cell phone, there's somewhere between 21 to 29 seconds difference on his cell phone. So even that one piece of instrumentation has some variance to it. So we know it's between 21 to 29 seconds at this approximate time. So this is taking into account that variance.
So the only time window that you have is based on the data, and that's reflected in the 12:32:04 to 12:32:12?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Is there any other window you can accommodate with the data you have other than that 10-second window?
Yes.
What's that?
So I was given information about a final lock event on the phone.
Let's stick with this window if we can.
Okay.
Since you only have 10 seconds of data, is it possible from the Lexus clock data to have a larger window than this 10-second window?
No, the text stream will only give you a 10-second window, but it doesn't tell the whole story because the vehicle's still moving.
Understood. Okay, continue, please.
So I have this other event, a lock event, and the information I was given, that's at 12, it's 12:32:09. And so we have the text stream data ending at somewhere between 12:32:04 and 12:32:12, which puts this number right in the middle of that, more or less.
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report. We're going over Karen Reed's retrial. Dr. Welsher's testimony today. This is the beginning. I mean, you know, it's interesting when I remembered or I thought back just after Welsher's testimony ended for the day today. All I remembered was Alessi objecting. I'm shocked listening again at how many quiet moments there were. But I think we're going into the territory where he just starts objecting constantly. And I don't know, not making much headway. I don't know how successful it was. And I'm also curious what you guys thought about the voir dire in the beginning, if the defense gained any advantage with that voir dire. I find these voir dires fairly pointless, but curious how you feel.
Continue.
Is this a good place to take a luncheon break?
Certainly are.
Okay, so why don't we do that, Junior? So we'll take 45 minutes for lunch.
Okay, this is a good time. I've been on for an hour and 40 minutes. We're going to finish this up at a later date. I'd love to continue on, but I think an hour and 36 minutes. I think it's fascinating. Don't you guys? I thought it was, Maestro says, Welsher said John hit the front of his head on the car. Right. And that's what we've been saying all along. Thank you to everyone who answered that question. I was confused as to why Hank Brennan was asking the jury when they went to the viewing of the scene, why to look at the spoiler on the car that, you know, the top near the roof of the car that juts out. And that's for the egg-shaped bump on his head. Of course, Karen Reed said that John O'Keefe did that 2 days before she ran him over, and he mentioned it to her. And Buchanan found that just rang all his police lying bells, as it would. I thought that was a stunner that came out in this trial. A lot of new information's come out in this trial that we didn't hear last trial. I'm just so disappointed that I'm hoping that the witness harassment campaign comes in more. It just feels like an incomplete story. And I'd love for it to show that really to add more information for the jury, what's really underneath that Jen McCabe, it's you or me, either you're going down or I'm going down statement. Love to go over Karen, and we still have a bunch of Karen Reed's own statements to go, I believe, unless they're editing them for time. You know, what this whole retrial shows you is how important, for me, this is what I've learned from it, how important the order of witnesses is, you want to present your case in a way that the jury can understand, that proves your case, but you don't want to overprove your case so much so that you end up making reasonable doubt for the jury, basically doing the defense's job, starting to poke holes in your own case. More witnesses you have. It's a real balancing act. So let's see where we are on this. 42%, I think you may be right. Karen Reed should put on a defense. 25% of you say, yeah, only a few of the witnesses she showed last year, like one or two of the people on her. She's a long witness list, but she did last time and she only called a few people. It was only a couple days. We look like we're finally getting to a close of this, and 33% say no. It's going to make her look worse to have Arca and Marie Russell and even La Posada, this disgraced medical examiner from Rhode Island, on the stand, who's now like a professional. expert witnesses for the defense now. So I will be up tomorrow morning around 8:40, 8:45. And thank you for your patience. We'll watch Welsher continue his testimony, and we'll try to go over, and I'll see you again at 6 tomorrow. But I'm really happy to see you all here. Please hit the thumbs up, support the channel. I cannot do these episodes without you. Please leave me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Did you guys hear the dog? It's always an animal. There's a cat or a dog. Please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Share this episode. Support the channel. Send me a Venmo. Actually, I have someone to thank. Hold on one second before I go. I'm sorry I left this to the last minute. Jan Kershaw, thank you so much. Send me a Venmo. Buy me a coffee. Great way to support the channel. Best bang for your buck. Or join my Patreon and get access to content you won't find anywhere else. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 8:40. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. I'm going to go out the way I so often do with my hit song, I Hit My Boyfriend With My Car. See you tomorrow morning.
I hit my boyfriend with my car. It wasn't an accident, but with lying lawyers I'll go far. Lying lawyers and witness harassment. I'll avoid prison. It was snowing. I pushed the pedal down, hit him hard. Now the legal system I clown. Innocence fraud campaign to save my skin. Making money, truth is my second victim. Carry, carry, gin, gin. Like John, you were my mark. My innocence fraud campaign is my biggest hit. Yet. I pushed the pedal down, hit him hard. Now the legal system I clown.